Hey, how's it going guys? Captain Kuba here and welcome to another God of War video. Today I thought we could finally move on from the topic of the higher plane of existence and talk about some equally important characters that were introduced in God of War Ragnarok. And believe me, I'm dying to talk to you guys about Hilda's Beanie. However, I thought it would be better to start by talking about Garm or Fenrir or both. It's complicated. And that's exactly what I want to talk to you guys about. I wanted to give you a full explanation about who Garm in Norse mythology is, as well as his interpretation in the God of War series. In order to understand the character of Garm fully, we have to look at the source material, Norse mythology. Now, I hate to burst this bubble so early on, but unfortunately, due to important source material being lost to history, Norse mythology as we have it today is incomplete, which has left scholars with no option but to make educated guesses, especially when it comes to obscure characters such as Garm, whose only mention appears in the Eddic poem called Voluspa. The mention goes as it follows. Now Garm howls wildly before the Gniblir cave, chains will snap, and the wolf will run. In addition to this text, there's also a possible mention to Garm in another poem called Baldur's Dramar. This poem tells the story of Odin's journey to the underworld after hearing about Baldur's dreams. Now, according to the story, as Odin enters the underworld, a mysterious wolf covered in blood howls at the All-Father. And this has led scholars to believe that this mention of Garm foreshadows Odin's death by Fenrir during Ragnarok, which means both Garm and Fenrir are the same character. And this scholarly take was something Santa Monica was inspired by when making God of War Ragnarok, as both Fenrir and Garm end up being the same character. Well, kinda. You see, the Fenrir we see at the beginning of the game is just a regular sized wolf who Kratos and Atreus found. Atreus named him Fenrir because he thought it was a cool Norse name. However, when Fenrir became too sick and the time came for Kratos and Atreus to say goodbye, something happened. Part of Fenrir's soul went into Atreus' knife, while the rest went to the light of Alfheim. When this happened, neither Kratos or Atreus were aware that this soul deposit had happened. It wasn't until Angrboda brought it up and later taught Atreus how to whisper the souls of giants that he began to suspect that maybe part of Fenrir's soul was within his knife. Later in the game, Atreus accidentally releases Garm, who Mimir tells us was imprisoned by the gods after he ate a chunk of Midgard as well as a season. And no, I'm not speaking metaphorically.
Why was he locked up to begin with?
Ah, Hell's feral sentinel. Well, believe it or not, Midgard was once bigger. Until Garm, then just a wee pup, got peckish.
He ate Midgard?
Only a few mountain ranges, and the 5th season that comes after winter but before spring.
Now on the mission to subdue Garm, Kratos obviously wanted to kill the beast. But after seeing that approach wasn't going to work with Garm, Atreus had the idea of giving Garm a soul of his own, and that soul turned out to be Fenrir. I honestly think this is one of the best moments in the story of God of War Ragnarok, not just because it serves as a pivotal point for Kratos and Atreus' arc, but also because it continues a tradition Santa Monica started many years ago of giving players what they expect from a mythological story, just not in a way they were expecting it. They did this with Atlas' imprisonment, Baldur's death, and most likely with a certain assassin from God of War Betrayal. I know I've been working on this video since forever, but I promise it's coming out soon. Anyway, Santa Monica took Norse mythology scholars' educated guess about Garm and Fenrir being the same character and gave it a story to explain away this seeming contradiction, and I freaking love it. But is this all we have to talk about Garm and Fenrir? Was he just a big wolf whose soul was changed by Atreus with the soul of a regular sized wolf? Are there really no more mysteries regarding Garm? Well, if you're watching a video from this channel, you probably suspect there's more to this character. For example, let me remind you of another mystery you probably forgot. In the God of War 2018 novel, Kratos recalls in a nightmare how he arrived to the Norse lands. The novel says that one day Kratos came across 3 wolves twice his height, one black with green eyes, one white, and the third grey. Behind them was a mysterious hooded woman who commanded the black wolf to violently drag Kratos to the Norse lands. Now later in the novel it's revealed that 2 of these wolves were Skoll and Hati. But who was the third wolf? The one that dragged Kratos to Scandinavia? Back then we used to think the wolf responsible for bringing Kratos to the Norse land was Fenrir. But Fenrir wasn't even born back then. So was the wolf Garm all along? No, that can't be, because Mimir makes a reference to Skoll and Hati's father in God of War 2018, and he doesn't refer to him as Garm.
You're familiar with the tale of Skoll and Hati, bringers of day and night?
Oh yeah, the wolf giants.
Aye. They were born of the archwolf Hrothwitnir, a great nemesis of the Aesir gods.
So hold on a second, Mimir. Are you telling me there's two giant mythological wolves in the Norse pantheon, one named Hrothwitnir and another Garm? No, that can't be the case, because Hrothwitnir is another name for Fenrir, who once again wasn't even born yet. You see, this is why I needed to make this video. Alright, so let's see how we can untangle this mess. First of all, no, I don't think there are two giant mythological wolves in the Norse pantheon. I think the wolf named Hrothwitnir is the same character as Garm. I come to this conclusion because the name Hrothwitnir truly is another name for Fenrir, and Garm embodied the character of Fenrir long before Atreus put the soul of his dead wolf in him. For example, in God of War Ragnarok, Mimir tells Kratos and Atreus the tale of how the gods captured Garm, and you will notice it sounds very similar to how Fenrir was captured in Norse mythology.
So, Mimir, how did they capture Garm in the first place?
That was Tyr's doing. He lured the beast somewhere safe and kept it distracted by lending his own arm to be gently chewed. Once the chains were on and the gate to Helheim was opened, Garm bit Tyr's arm clean off in retribution.
This means that long before Atreus gave Garm's Fenrir soul, Fenrir technically already existed in the form of Garm, which means we can safely say that Garm is Skoll and Hati's father. But if I'm going with this interpretation, then I'm gonna have to explain another mystery you probably thought of already. How is it possible that this rabid and dangerous wolf fathered these two peaceful wolves who just want to sleep all day? Was Garm always like this? Is it possible there was a time when Garm was as peaceful as his offspring? This certainly seems to be the case, as in the God of War 2018 novel, he seems to follow commands from the mysterious woman very well, almost like she trained him. Another piece of evidence supporting this theory can be found in his eyes. As Atreus said during their mission, Garm doesn't have a soul, and this concept was conveyed to the player by giving Garm grey eyes, something that had been established earlier in the story as a symptom that points to a lack of soul.
What's wrong with it? I can't feel anything.
There's nothing to feel. Gryla whispered its soul away.
So if this ox-looking thing has grey eyes because Gryla whispered its soul away, then we have to ask ourselves, who took Garm's soul? Was it Odin? Athena? The most conservative answer would be Gryla, because we have first-hand knowledge that that's exactly what she does. But the thing is, a future revelation that Gryla took Garm's soul would not really move the plot in any way. That's why I think it has to be someone more important in the story of the God of War series. But who? Well, what if I tell you that the person who stole Garm's soul was none other than the Demiurge? You really thought this wasn't gonna be about the higher plane of existence? You people in the lower plane of existence are just so gullible, man. Look, I've already made 2 videos explaining what I think the higher plane of existence is, so I'm not gonna do it again. I recommend watching this video first if you want to buy into this theory fully, but if you don't want to do that, I'll briefly explain it here. According to the previous theory, the Demiurge was the evil being responsible for creating the God of War universe. But in this theory, there's another being who's more powerful than the Demiurge called the Monad. After the creation of the world, this being sent pieces of himself to the world below in order to counteract the effects of the Demiurge. To the Greek realm, the Monad gave hope, and to the Norse realm, he gave what I like to call the Mask of Knowledge. It's possible the Monad sent other pieces of himself to other mythologies, but at the moment, it's too early to tell. Now, the goal for the Demiurge is to obtain these powers in order to become more powerful. So first, he appeared to Kratos in the form of Athena in order to trick him into giving him the power of hope. While in the Norse realm, he appeared to Odin in the form of a rift that promised him ultimate knowledge if he was successful in retrieving the mask. This is why both Athena from God of War 3 and the rift share the same color. They're the Demiurge in disguise. Now, what does any of this have to do with Garm? Well, do you remember how Garm was introduced in the story? What was Atreus doing in Helheim? He was following the mask directions that were supposed to take him to another piece of the mask, but oddly enough, the mask only took him to where Garm was. After freeing Garm, Atreus can go around the corner still looking for the mask, but for some reason, the mask stops giving him directions, which means the mask was truly guiding Atreus in the direction of Garm.
A dead end? Please tell me it's down in the water or something.
There's... How? It's not responding anymore.
And later, when both Atreus and Thrud are about to leave Helheim, you see some claw marks in the distance left by Garm that look suspiciously similar to the rift in Odin's basement. So clearly, Garm and the higher plane of existence are connected somehow. But in what way? Well, I believe long before the Demiurge tricked Odin into collecting the mask for him, he had tricked someone else into doing the same. And that someone was Garm. Because if I was a Demiurge looking for the Mask of Knowledge that had been split into 3 parts across the realms, why wouldn't I recruit a giant wolf who can easily cross realms using magic? This ability alone would make looking for these mask pieces a lot easier. But I'm sure the Demiurge couldn't just show up to Novel Garm one day and tell him to start working for him. He had to bind them to his own will. And what better way to do this than stealing his soul? After doing this, Garm went from being a noble giant who most likely went on missions to save the realms with Fae, to this, a creature whose only goal became to look for a mask. So the reason the mask initially guided Atreus towards Garm is because much like the mask, Garm also had a connection to the higher plane of existence thanks to his allegiance to the Demiurge. Now, I suspect Garm's search for the mask came to a stop whenever he came across Odin, as soon after he was imprisoned in Helheim. This left the Demiurge without anyone to help him retrieve the mask, which is why he gave this job to Odin. But instead of stealing his soul like he did with Garm, he did something better. He offered him ultimate knowledge, something he couldn't resist.
Possibly the birthplace of reality. I looked inside and something was there looking back at me. It whispered to me things I couldn't possibly comprehend, but I knew they were true.
So, as Odin became more and more successful in finding the mask, Garm was forgotten in the underworld by his master, left alone in the rigid cold to freeze for all eternity. Until Atreus stabbed him in the forehead and made it all better. So what do you guys think about this theory? Is it possible the Demiurge took Garm's soul and commanded him to look for the mask long before he did the same with Odin? I understand this sounds like a very far-fetched theory. In fact, if you start looking at the timeline of this series too closely, this theory probably falls apart. But still, do you think this theory would be a good way to patch this minor retcon between what God of War 2018 and the novels say about Fenrir, versus how God of War Ragnarok portrays him? If you do, make sure to tell me why in the comments section below. And if you don't, you can also let me know why you disagree. I like reading both sides. Now, as always, I would like to thank all of my members for supporting the channel monthly. People like Ali Atabi, Marvin Thomas, Ahmed Sharway, Michael Skarn, and DJ the Cali Boy, to name a few, are a big reason this channel is still alive. You might have heard about this, but YouTube is once again doing a cleanup of videos that contain any type of violence. My channel hasn't been targeted yet, but having these fans that support the channel monthly truly helps me keep a positive mindset about working at good old unpredictable YouTube. So from the bottom of my heart, guys, thank you. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. I know it doesn't seem like much to you, but it truly does help put me in the algorithm. And with that said, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more God of War content, and as always remember, go forth in the name of All Father Kratos.